Muslim leaders don't know how to differ. If they differ with you, they think they are your enemy. And that's a big problem because it makes us an intolerant community. It means that you're a priest and I'm a priest. You have your 1,000 blind followers and I have my 1,000 blind followers. And eventually it will lead to a clash. We will make a war between the two of us. And you can see it in Muslim countries also. In most Muslim countries, you have the military ruling the country. Why? Because ordinary people just can't deal with each other. When they differ with each other, they want to kill each other. And so the military, having the gun and having the weaponry, they become the arbiter of what is true and what is right. And if they believe that we want to be Salafist, then the country is Salafist. And if they believe that we want to be Shi'i, then the country is Shi'i, or whatever. So the military really decides. And so what the Islam that we live in today, that we experience, is the Islam of might makes right. And unfortunately, we will never be able to come a force on this planet again if we don't change that. How do we differ? And in my own experience, I'm not making this up, because in my own experience, when I was a younger man, I was escorted out of the mosque for questioning the priest, asking him to clarify a point that he made, which was a contradictory point to something he said earlier. And I was thrown out of the mosque. Also in earlier years, we had a situation where we tried to produce or to put together a more socially aware Islamic Jama'ah in this town. And we were also declared heretics, communists, Shi'is, whatever, all these labels, and we were kicked out of the mosques and out of the fold. And there's an example of the great Imam Harun, who was also a social activist who tried to make Islam have meaning to the people and not just be a pie-in-the-sky religion. And he was also ousted. He was really sidelined, and they only loved him when he was dead, and they all came to his funeral. So unfortunately, the Muslims do have that. And if you look at Muslim countries, even the whole Shia-Sunni war, and it is a war where people are prepared to go and kill each other, blast mosques, blow up religious centers, shrines. It's a terrible, 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 terrible situation, and we cannot go into the future like that. And what I want to do in this video is I want to explain to you why is that so, and maybe we can look at how to solve the problem once we know why that is so. You see, in Islam, let me first give you a little bit of a jawbreaker, and then we'll take it from there. The word epistemic fallacy, that is the important word that I want to introduce you to explain the problem. The epistemic fallacy is basically a situation where the scholar or the student or any person mistakes their understanding of reality for what reality really is, right? So let me just illustrate that by means of an example. If I'm a observer of the weather, and my observation over many years of the weather is that it is wet in winter, it rains a lot in winter, and it is very dry and hot in summer, then that would be my understanding of the weather. And if anyone asks me what's the weather like, what can you say about the weather, then I would answer that the weather is as follows: it's wet in winter and it's dry and hot in summer. But now, the mistake I would be making if I committed the epistemic fallacy would be to say that that is the weather in all cases. You see, if I then insist that that is the weather when you go to the Bahamas, or when you go to the equator, or when you go to the North Pole, then I would be committing the epistemic fallacy. I'm overreaching my understanding to beyond my context, or beyond the limitations of my spatial or time confines or context. So that is the epistemic fallacy, right? You get what I mean by the epistemic fallacy. Now, Muslims commit the epistemic fallacy every day in their religious schools. Every day, millions of little children, young adults, go to their madrasa, and tens of thousands of young men go to seminaries, religious seminaries, whether it is in Qom, whether it is in Medina, whether it is in Egypt, whether it is in Deoband, they go to their schools and they commit the epistemic fallacy. They go to those schools, and in those schools, they are taught that what we are teaching, our reading of Islam, is Islam. Right? So if I come from Deoband, then the Deoband understanding of Islam, in my mind, is Islam. And I have no way, of thinking that there is maybe alternative understandings of Islam. But committing the epistemic fallacy would not create the tragedy that we currently observe within the Muslim world. That tragedy is actually created by some of the content of the religious beliefs of Muslims. Now, Muslims believe, you see, Hadith Islam, Hadithist Islam, or Salafist Islam has a very skeptical or negative opinion of anyone that is outside of the fold of Islam. So even if you're a Christian or a Jew or a Hindu, at best you are tolerated. But you are tolerated as almost like a nuisance. And it would be better if you weren't different, because you're creating a complication. And so Christians within Muslim countries, more or less, it amounts to shut up and stay in your corner. You're not really allowed much more than that. But there's a worse thing. You see, the Islamic law about apostasy says that if you're a Muslim and you don't believe correctly, if you commit a heresy, then you are worse than a Christian. Then you are actually, your blood becomes halal. And so the Muslims have a skeptical position of the people of the book, like the Christians and the Jews, but they have an absolute position of intolerance towards Muslims who commit heresy. So now you couple those two ideas, right? You have the epistemic fallacy, which means my Islam is the right Islam. Now, anyone that comes with an alternative reading of Islam is now placed in the category of heretic, apostate. Even if you differ slightly, like I now see that if you don't believe in all the khulaf, in all the sahabis, then you are also kafir. I've seen that, So if you don't believe in all the sahabis, you're kafir. So they don't tolerate any difference. So first of all, the epistemic fallacy, and then secondly, the intolerance, the apostasy, the understanding of apostasy. They all of that is based in hadith. You see, the Qur'an never ever speaks about that you got to believe in all the Sahaba, 120,000, you got to believe in the Khulafa, you got to believe in... No, those are all... You see, the Qur'an's message is believe in God, believe in His messenger, believe in the angels, believe in the books, believe in the... the final day, the judgment day. There's about 5 or 6 core beliefs, or maybe up to 10 core beliefs that we can draw out of the Quran. Not tens and hundreds of core beliefs that... So what I'm saying is that it's the epistemic fallacy, and then secondly, the misreading of the texts, that anyone who differs with your understanding is a heretic. Now put those two together, then you get intolerance. Then you get a situation where I cannot allow you to differ. I, as a Sunni, cannot allow a Shi'i to coexist. And if they do coexist, it is only temporarily until I have the means to eliminate him. And pretty much in a more maybe dignified and in a more polished, or what is the word that I can put, in a more courteous way, the Shi'i scholars have a similarly intolerant view towards Sunnis, and that is a fact. I mean, I've been in both, and I know that really deep down the Shias are just a bit more polite about it, but they really think that the Sunnis are a bunch of misguided fools, and they killed Imam Hussein, and they deserve, they don't deserve to be treated like an equal. Yes, it's changing, and I can say that one thing in the Shia circles that they are lightening up, but as being the minority, they need to be a bit more circumspect, a bit more maybe courteous about their difference. But the the point I'm making is that those two things, the epistemic fallacy and the misreading and that reading of the text of the hadith, that anyone who differs with me is an apostate, those two create the intolerance we have today. And that is why in Egypt, if you look at Egypt, Egypt had an opportunity there in 2011, 2012. They had an amazing opportunity when they had the opportunity to become the first Arab country that is true civilian-based administration. But when the Salafist parties and all the other parties, they used the military to reject the first, or the first civilian administration under Muhammad Morsi. And so there is just no prospect for a true participative democracy or a consultative system in a Muslim country, as long as we teach our children that whatever we teach you is the right way. Now, I'm not saying that everyone's understanding is equally valid. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. You see, we need, like what somebody told me in a debate I had with somebody the other day, they said to me that there has to be a right way, otherwise there'll be chaos. No, there has to be a public arena. You see, if there's a public arena, if we are able to exchange our ideas, to debate ideas, and to fight ideas with better ideas, then there will be a consensus that will emerge within that public open space. But if we shut down that public open space, as Muslims do quite often, they don't allow any dissent, then what we do is we are disallowing the outside view, and we are turning our view into the only view. We should have trust. You see, the Muslims run to the West, and that is where they find sanity to some extent. I mean, it's not, there's no perfect society, but I know that the Muslims, the Arabs, the Afghanis, the Indian Muslims, wherever they are, they all run to America and to Europe. They aspire to those societies. But those societies have a healthy functioning, hopefully it's still healthy functioning, public space where people are prepared and willing to debate issues and to take contrarian positions and to allow the best position to emerge. Now that is changing. We're living in a complex world. Like in America right now, the public open spaces are no longer that. They're being shut down, you see. And so we have to look at the West maybe 50 years ago, or that would be more an ideal representation of what the West is, what the ideal public open space is. And that is, my friends, what I would say is that we should have the courage to open up the debate within Muslim communities. We should allow contrary views to be heard by the people, and we should allow the people to use their intellect, their intelligence, to take a position. You see, why can we do it in everything else? Why can we be free when it comes to business? We can be free when it comes to cultural things, but we can't be free when it comes to religious understanding. We all believe in the same Qur'an. We don't compromise on the Qur'an, but we need to allow people's perspectives to be shared. And through a process of us, our scholars, engaging with each other, we will arrive at some sort of a workable consensus. Like in the medical fraternity, you don't find doctors in the West who believe differently from doctors in China and Japan and from even doctors in Egypt. That's because they allow the public open space of medical research to proceed, and nobody believes in their medical explanation blindly. We have to share our information, and we reach a best understanding, whether it is of the way we understand cancer, the way we understand diabetes, the way we understand any disease, right? As long as that public open space is kept open and free, there's the prospect of humanity having a peaceful evolution and growth and emergence towards a better state. But the Muslims have shut that down, and sadly, the West in general, America, Britain, Canada, they've all turned their own liberal societies into restricted societies. They now all want to follow the example of banning alternative views, banning alternative scientists that come with alternative understandings, and that was so prevalent within COVID. And you can see the end result. The end result is never good when we do not allow public open debate to be in operation, and we try to enforce one view on the rest of the people.